Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. I'm coming to you from Winter NAMm 2018. We're in the Music Man booth with the one and only Albert Lee. It's great to see you.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little about what you're doing here at the show.
I've been performing on the stand with Steve Morse and Sterling, of course.
Right.
And that was great fun. You know, we did that for a couple of days. Today we just did a Q&A thing, you know, with Lukather and Steve, and because we have an album out, you know, the Mutual Admiration Society, you know.
Right.
Where we're all playing like fun instrumentals, you know.
Right.
But I always like to come down here and network and see if I can find any new toys. You know, I haven't found anything yet, you know.
Right. There are lots of stuff here, so once you get a chance to get out and look around.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Right.
And you know, and I've got my own guitars anyway, you know, so I'm not really looking so much for guitars, but just little innovations, really, you know.
Right. So tell us about that. You've been associated with Ernie Ball for a lot of years and had your signature guitars. How did that association start? And tell us a little bit about the instruments.
Well, I got to know the family in '71, I guess. I came over here with an English band called Head, Hands and Feet.
Sure.
And our first album, you know, we had a couple of country songs on it. Ernie Ball heard our Country Boy on the radio, and he was quite tickled to discover that this was an English band, you know.
Right.
So he and Sterling came to see us play a couple of times, and that was the start of our lifelong friendship, really.
Nice.
I used to spend a lot of time with the family when they were down in Newport Beach, and I'd actually sleep on the couch down there, you know.
Right.
And you know, I started using their strings then, and then I think Sterling was actually Tom Walker's godson. Tom Walker and Leo Fender started the Music Man company, and so I started to use the amps at that time, you know. But then the company kind of, Leo left to start G&L, so it all kind of fell apart. Ernie Ball bought the Music Man name, and then they decided that they were going to design some guitars from scratch.
Right.
So I was right in it on the ground floor with that, you know. I gave them a few of my ideas and what I'd like, and then I started using the new Music Man guitars, and I've been using them ever since, you know.
Right. You have a very distinctive guitar. Obviously, you started with Telecasters when you were early on doing the country. What was it that led you to the shape that you're playing now?
Well, I saw it. They made half a dozen for a NAMM show years ago, and I thought, well, they look kind of interesting, you know, pretty wacky looking, and I never really did try one. And then Sterling called me one day. By this time, we had a band called Biff Baby's All Stars when we played local gigs just for the fun of it, you know. And this is with Sherwood, Sterling's brother, and occasionally with Steve Morse, you know. And Sterling had one of these guitars made, and they were actually called the Axis back in those days. And he said, well, you see this guitar, you're going to love it, you know. And it was all maple neck, maple body. And of course, when I saw it, he said, oh, I said, this is fantastic. And I played it on the gig. He said, oh, okay, it's yours.
Nice.
You know, so that became my main guitar for a long time. And it still wasn't on the market, you know. But they really didn't have enough of a production going at the time, you know. They were making the silhouettes and of course the bass, which was still very popular, you know. So, but it was a few years later that eventually that guitar came out with my name on it, you know.
Right.
And it's been my guitar ever since. I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, when you came over with Country Boy, with such dazzling technique and a unique approach to playing, what was it that led you in that direction, and how did you develop that unique style?
Well, I was kind of an odd man out in England, you know, because everybody was playing through Marshall stacks, and I was playing a Telecaster through two 410 Fender Basements, which, you know, they weren't being manufactured then. You know, I managed to pick up two of them in England. I was probably the only guy in England to own them, you know, and I was listening to James Burton and Don Rich with Buck Owens, and I loved all that chicken picking, you know.
Right.
And you know, I got to meet Jerry Reed in England once or twice. He came over and I played rhythm guitar for him on some broadcasts, you know.
Right.
So, but I'd already started to play that style. I never could get on with the thumb pick. I'd always used a flat pick and fingers, you know. So I was already playing that hybrid style of playing, you know. But it wasn't until I got to the States and people like picked up on what I was doing, you know. And said, well, it's this English guy, he's doing all this Nashville stuff and whatever.
Right.
Oh, and you know, called the Bakersfield sound too, you know.
Right.
So I found that I was being appreciated more here than I was in England at the time, you know. So, and then, you know, eventually I moved here. When I joined Emmylou Harris, I thought, well, this is it. This is where I live now, you know. So.
Right. Yeah, and you really spawned a whole generation and a lot of following of guys that are kind of pursuing that same kind of path.
Yeah, well, it's nice. It's nice to know, you know. I get a lot of comments about that. People say, yeah, well, I think I influenced quite a few people here, you know. But I was originally influenced by all the Americans, you know, that I listened to. Guys from the 50s and 60s, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice for someone who wants to develop their own tone, their own sound, what would that advice be?
Oh, gosh. Well, you know, there's so many players now who rely so much on their pedal boards, you know, and the guitar really, for me, is unrecognizable, you know. I think you really need to learn to play with as little effects as possible, you know, maybe a little reverb or whatever, and learn about the tone of your guitar, you know, and that's the way I learned to play. That was the only way, really.
Right.
You know, trying to copy my heroes, you know, and very soon I was off on my own, utilizing what I learned from them, you know, but without very much effect, really. You know, and I'm still the same now. I use a little delay, reverb, maybe a little compression, but basically it's the tone of the guitar. You know, and I think the fingers help too. I'm told that there people recognize my style immediately. You know.
Right. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Right. Great advice, Albert. Thanks so much. We appreciate you sitting down with us in the middle of a busy show.
Oh no, you're welcome. I appreciate the interest. Thank you.
You bet. Have a great show. And thank you for joining me at Winter NAMm 2018. We are in the Music Man booth with Albert Lee. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.